There's a doctor in his 40s who just bought his third investment property. There's a janitor who spent 38 years cleaning floors at a hospital in Vermont. One of them earned more money in a single year than the other made in a decade. And yet, when they both passed away, only one of them left behind a fortune worth $8 million. It wasn't the doctor. His name was Ronald Reed. Nobody in his small town suspected a thing. He drove an old car, wore a worn coat, and split his own firewood well into his 80s. When he died in 2014, his family and neighbors were stunned to learn he had quietly built a stock portfolio worth close to $8 million. No lottery ticket, no inheritance, no secret business empire, just decades of a simple, boring rule that almost nobody around him was following. That story doesn't feel strange because Ronald Reed got lucky. It feels strange because it breaks something we've all been taught to believe without question, that a bigger paycheck is the way out, higher income, a better title, a raise that finally makes life feel easier. That's the goal we chase, and it feels logical, because on paper, more money really should mean more freedom. But here's the part almost nobody stops to notice. Some of the highest earners in the country, surgeons, attorneys, executives with impressive salaries, quietly file for bankruptcy or retire with almost nothing saved. Not because they didn't earn enough, because earning was never the part they were missing. What they were missing is a rule most wealthy families pass down quietly, almost like a family secret, while everyone else learns it decades too late. Usually right around the moment they realize working harder stopped making them richer. That's what this video is really about. Not how to make more money. You already know how to do that, or you're already working on it. This is about the rule that decides whether the money you make ever turns into something that lasts, or whether it just passes through your hands on its way to somewhere else. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the exact rule that separates people who build real lasting wealth from people who simply earn a lot and never actually get ahead. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Not in your own life, and not in the lives of people around you who are working incredibly hard for money that never seems to stay. So here's the real question worth sitting with for a second. If making more money guaranteed financial freedom, why do so many high-income professionals quietly struggle behind closed doors? While a janitor with a modest paycheck built a fortune most people will never come close to. The answer isn't about luck. It isn't about income. It's about a rule, and it's time you learned it now, instead of decades from now. Picture a couple sitting at their kitchen table, opening an email that says the raise finally came through, 12%. After years of asking, waiting, and quietly resenting coworkers who seemed to move up faster, it finally happened. For about a week, everything feels different. Dinner out on a Tuesday, a new couch, a vacation that got booked instead of postponed again. Fast forward 1 year, same couple, same table, same stack of bills. The raise is still there on paper, but somehow the bank account looks almost identical to before. Nothing dramatic happened. No emergency, no bad luck, no single expensive mistake. Life just quietly got a little more expensive to match the new number on the paycheck. This is the part that catches people off guard. It's not that the extra money vanished. It's that it got absorbed, one small decision at a time, until it stopped feeling like extra money at all. There's a name for this pattern, and once you see it, you notice it everywhere. It's called lifestyle creep, and it's not a personal failure. It's closer to a default setting. The moment income rises, spending rises with it, almost automatically, almost invisibly, until the gap between the two stays exactly the same size it was before. Here's why this matters more than it seems. Somewhere along the way, most of us picked up the idea that a bigger salary is the goal. Get the raise, get the promotion, get the bigger number, and financial stress disappears. It sounds reasonable. It's also incomplete. Income and wealth are not the same thing, even though they get treated like synonyms. Income is what flows in. Wealth is what stays. A high income with nothing left over at the end of the month isn't wealth. It's just a bigger pipe with a bigger leak. Think about it like fuel in a car. Fuel doesn't decide where you end up, direction does. Pour more fuel into a car that's driving in circles, and all you get is a car that circles faster, burning through more gas in the process. That's what a raise does without a system behind it. It doesn't create freedom. It just speeds up the same loop. This is where the shift needs to happen, and it's smaller than most people expect. Not earn more, keep more. Before your next raise arrives, before the next bonus lands in your account, decide in advance where a portion of it goes before your lifestyle gets the chance to notice it exists. That one decision, made early, is the difference between money that circulates and money that compounds. Because here's the question worth sitting with. If a bigger income doesn't automatically create wealth, then somewhere out there, people are getting wealthy a different way. Not by earning more than everyone else. By making one quiet decision that most households never even think to make. Two contractors start out on the same street, in the same year, running nearly identical businesses. One of them shows up to every job in a brand new truck, wraps it in glossy branding, and within 2 years upgrades to a bigger office with a lobby that looks like it belongs to a much bigger company. The other drives a plain, older truck, works out of a small rented unit, and turns down a lease on a nicer space because the numbers didn't make sense yet. For a while, it looks obvious who's winning. Clients comment on the new truck. Other contractors ask how business is going so well. The flashy one gets treated like the success story of the group, and honestly, it's easy to see why. Everything about the business looks like it's thriving. 5 years later, the story flips. The contractor with the shiny truck and the impressive office is still working just as hard, still stressed about cash flow, still one slow month away from trouble. The one with the plain truck now owns 2 rental properties bought with cash from the business, and works fewer hours than he used to. Nothing about his appearance ever suggested that. That's exactly the point. This happens more often than people realize, and it's not really about contractors or trucks. It's about a quiet confusion between looking successful and being financially secure. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us absorbed the idea that visible success is proof of internal success. That if something looks impressive from the outside, it must be solid on the inside too. But those two things aren't the same, and sometimes they're working against each other. Here's what's actually happening underneath the surface. Spending on appearance often isn't really about the item itself. It's about how the item makes a person feel. Confident, respected, taken seriously. That feeling is real, but it's expensive, and it has to be paid for constantly, because status doesn't stay purchased. It has to be maintained, upgraded, and defended, which means the money that could have built security keeps getting redirected into keeping up an image instead. So the uncomfortable question becomes personal fairly quickly. Not what does that person spend on, but what do I spend on, and why? Some purchases genuinely improve your life or move you forward. Others exist mainly to be seen. The two can look identical on a receipt and feel completely different once you're honest about the reason behind them. This week, that's worth actually sitting with. Pick 3 recent purchases and ask which category they belong to, value or image. Not to feel guilty about it, just to notice it clearly, maybe for the first time. Because if looking wealthy isn't the same as becoming wealthy, then somewhere quietly, without anyone applauding it, real wealth is being built a completely different way. In the 1980s, a fund manager named John Templeton did something that made almost no sense to the people watching him. While everyone else was chasing hot stocks and trying to time dramatic breakthroughs, he quietly bought unglamorous companies, held them for years, sometimes decades, and rarely made a move that anyone would call exciting. No headline-worthy trades, no dramatic bets, just the same patient process repeated over and over year after year. At the time, flashier investors were making bigger, faster gains and getting all the attention for it. Templeton's approach looked almost boring by comparison. But zoom out 30 years, and the boring approach didn't just keep up. It outperformed nearly all of them, because those flashier bets eventually hit a bad year, a bad decade, or a single catastrophic mistake that erased years of gains in a matter of months. That pattern shows up far beyond investing, and it points to something most people never fully absorb. Wealth doesn't usually come from one enormous win. It comes from a decision made correctly, repeated so many times that the repetition itself becomes the advantage. Compounding isn't a financial trick. It's just consistency, given enough time to multiply. Here's the part that's genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. If small, repeated decisions are what actually build wealth, then most people aren't failing because they lack a brilliant idea. They're failing because staying consistent, quietly, without applause for years at a time is far harder than it sounds. A big win feels exciting. A repeated habit feels like nothing at all, especially in the early years when the results barely show. This is the actual shift worth making. Stop searching for one decision that changes everything overnight. Start building one decision you're willing to repeat for the next decade, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If patience is genuinely the advantage, and most people already sort of know that, why does almost everyone abandon it the moment it gets tested? Here's a scene that plays out in almost every household at some point. Someone sets a savings goal on a Sunday night, feeling completely certain this time will be different. By Thursday, a coworker mentions a weekend trip or a sale notification pops up, and that certainty quietly disappears. The money gets spent. And afterward comes the familiar verdict. I just don't have enough discipline. That verdict feels true in the moment. It also happens to be wrong, and getting this wrong is exactly why so many people keep failing at the same goal year after year, then blaming themselves for it every single time. Here's what's actually going on underneath. Your brain didn't evolve to plan for a comfortable retirement 40 years from now. It evolved to keep you alive this week, which means it's built to weigh a reward you can have today far more heavily than a reward that's still decades away, even when you fully understand, intellectually, that the second one matters more. That's not a character flaw. That's just how human wiring works, and it explains a pattern showing up everywhere. Think about someone who scrolls past 3 different friends, posting new cars, new kitchens, a vacation photo, all in the same afternoon. Suddenly, saving money doesn't feel smart. It feels like falling behind. That reaction isn't weakness either. It's the same ancient wiring, just triggered by comparison instead of temptation, quietly convincing you that spending now is somehow safer than waiting. So, if willpower isn't really the deciding factor, what actually is? The people who consistently keep their money don't have stronger willpower than everyone else. They've simply stopped relying on willpower at all. They built systems that make the long-term choice happen automatically, before daily temptation ever gets a vote. Picture it like this. Instead of deciding every single payday whether to save, the decision gets made once, in advance, and then it just runs on its own. A portion of every paycheck moves into savings the same day it lands, before it ever touches everyday spending. No daily negotiation. No moment where tired, tempted you has to out-argue impulsive you, because that fight was already settled in advance, back when you were thinking clearly. This week, that's the one move worth making. Not a new budget, not a stricter rule to white-knuckle through. One automatic transfer, set up once, that quietly removes the decision from your hands before your wiring ever gets the chance to interfere. Because once that shift actually clicks, an entirely different question starts to matter. If wealthy families aren't relying on willpower either, what specific move are they making instead? The one that turns ordinary income into something that actually lasts. 2 employees start at the same company on the same day, earning nearly identical salaries. One of them uses her bonuses to renovate her kitchen, upgrade her car every few years, and take the vacations she feels she's earned. The other uses his bonuses to buy shares of the company's stock, pay down his mortgage early, and quietly fund an online course that eventually lets him move into a higher-paying role. 10 years pass. Both of them still look, on paper, like they're doing fine. But one of them now has options the other doesn't. She can't easily reduce her hours because her expenses grew right alongside her income. He can. He has a stake in a company that's grown in value, a mortgage that's nearly gone, and a skill set that makes him harder to replace and easier to promote. Same starting point, same income, two completely different sets of choices available to them now. That gap didn't come from one dramatic decision. It came from a pattern, repeated quietly, bonus after bonus, year after year, until the two paths simply stopped resembling each other. Here's the distinction worth sitting with. Every dollar that comes in eventually falls into one of two categories: dollars that work for you and dollars that disappear. A vacation is memorable, but the moment it ends, that money is gone completely, with nothing left behind to show for it. Shares of a company, a portion of a mortgage paid off early, a skill that makes you more valuable at work. These don't disappear. They sit there quietly, working in the background, whether you're paying attention to them or not. This is the real difference between spending and owning, and it has nothing to do with how much someone earns. Owning means a piece of your money keeps generating value long after you've stopped thinking about it. Spending means the value ends the moment the transaction does. Wealthy families understand this distinction so deeply that it barely feels like a decision to them anymore. It's closer to a reflex, passed down the way some families pass down a recipe or a work ethic, mentioned so often growing up that eventually it just becomes automatic. Here's where this becomes personal, and it's simpler than it sounds. Somewhere in your monthly spending, there's very likely one expense that's pure consumption, gone the instant it happens, that could instead be redirected towards something that owns a piece of your future. Not everything, not all at once, just one. But if this strategy is really this simple, if it's just a matter of choosing ownership over consumption slightly more often, that raises an obvious question. Why does it typically take people until their 40s or 50s to actually start applying it, instead of their 20s, when it would have mattered most? That question deserves a real answer, and it's not the one people usually expect. It isn't a conspiracy. Nobody sat in a room and decided to keep this from you on purpose. What actually happened is quieter and, in some ways, more uncomfortable than a conspiracy would be. Think back to school for a moment. Most people spend 12, 16, sometimes 20 years in a classroom, and somewhere in that entire stretch, there's rarely a class that teaches what a compound interest actually feels like over 30 years, or how to tell the difference between an asset and a liability, or why the order you spend your first paycheck in can shape the next 20. Algebra, yes. Essays, yes. This, almost never. And it's easy to assume that gap means the information doesn't matter much. It means the opposite. Here's the uncomfortable part. Financial education isn't missing by accident. It's absent because entire industries are built on people not fully understanding it. Credit card companies profit when spending feels effortless. Advertising exists to make consumption feel urgent and ownership feel boring. Even casual financial advice tends to circulate around spending tips, budgeting apps, and discount codes, rather than the slower, less exciting mechanics of ownership and time. None of this is secret. It's just not profitable to teach loudly. So the belief so many people carry that if this rule really mattered, someone would have taught it to them sooner, quietly falls apart. It was never hidden behind a locked door. It was simply never anyone's job to hand it to you, because nobody profits from you learning it early. That's exactly why this realization tends to arrive so late, and almost always for the same reason. A missed retirement deadline, a parent who worked 40 years with nothing to retire on, a friend who earned an impressive salary for a decade and somehow has nothing to show for it. It usually takes a moment like that, a hard one, before the rule actually lands. But you don't need a painful moment to make it land. You just needed someone to finally say it plainly, which is exactly what's happening right now. So here's the real decision in front of you. Not whether you learned this later than you would have liked. Everyone did. The decision is whether you pass it forward to a younger sibling, a kid, a friend just starting their first real paycheck, instead of letting them find out the same hard way you almost did. Because once you actually accept that this rule was learnable all along, a much bigger question follows right behind it. At your age, with the life you already have, what does actually applying it look like starting today? There's a version of this moment that plays out for almost everyone at some point. A number pops into your head, 35, 42, 50, and a quiet voice says it's probably too late to change much now. That voice feels reasonable. It even feels like maturity, like finally accepting reality instead of chasing something unrealistic. But that voice is working off the wrong math. It assumes the only version of this that counts is the one where you started at 22. It ignores the simpler truth sitting right underneath it, that the rule doesn't care when you start. It only cares that you do. Here's what that actually looks like in practice. Someone in their 40s redirects one recurring expense, the same one we talked about earlier, into a single share of an index fund or an extra payment on a loan. Small, almost forgettable in the moment. But that one action does something the years of waiting never did. It restarts a clock that had been sitting still. Every year spent waiting isn't neutral. It's not just standing still either. It's the one cost that can never be recovered, refunded, or made up for later, no matter how much money eventually shows up. Time is the only resource in this entire conversation that only moves in one direction. So here's the only assignment that matters right now. Before this day ends, write down one specific action, something that builds an asset instead of consuming cash, and give yourself 7 days to actually do it. Not someday, not once things settle down, 7 days. Because once you strip away the excuses, the timing, and the comparisons to people who started earlier, everything you've just learned collapses into a single, uncomfortable sentence. The one that quietly separates everyone who gets ahead from everyone who doesn't. Here's the sentence. Write it down if you need to. The middle class spends a lifetime chasing income. The wealthy quietly master one rule, and then they let time do the rest. That's it. That's the whole thing this video has been circling from the very first minute. Not a secret formula, not a hidden investment. Just a different relationship with the same paycheck everyone else is also cashing every month. Go back to that doctor and that janitor for a second. One of them earned more in a single year than the other made in 10. And yet only one of them died with $8 million quietly sitting in a portfolio nobody knew about. The difference was never the income. It was the decision about what that income was actually for. You already know the decision now. It's not complicated, and it was never meant to be. This month, take one expense, just one, that disappears the moment you spend it, and redirect it towards something that doesn't disappear. A share, a payment toward a loan, a skill that makes you harder to replace, small on its own, almost invisible in the moment. But that's exactly how the compounding clock always starts, quietly, with nobody watching, decades before anyone notices the result. Wealth was never really about how much you earned. It was always about how early you understood what that money was actually for. You know it now. What you do with the next 30 days is what separates knowing it from actually living it.